AITA for letting my sister-in-law's boyfriend brag before exposing his shady deal? I was 38 when I finally learned the difference between keeping the peace and volunteering to be disrespected. I'm Tristan, Claire's husband of 9 years, and for most of our marriage, I was the guy who remembered everyone's coffee order at family breakfasts, carried extra chairs out for backyard dinners, and let little comments slide because I thought that's what adults did. I didn't realize Claire's family had mistaken my restraint for permission. Claire's family was close, the way some families are when they never let anyone breathe without commentary. Birthdays were never just birthdays. They were performances. Someone always had a new car to mention, a vacation to describe a little too loudly, a promotion to hint at, or a watch to hold in the light until someone noticed. At first, I thought it was funny. I grew up around quieter tables, so Claire's family felt alive to me. Loud, messy, dramatic, but alive. I liked helping. I liked bringing ice when Diane forgot it, carrying chairs out when Robert hosted in the backyard, and making sure the older relatives had plates before I sat down. I liked being useful. I didn't need applause for it. That was where I made my mistake. In Claire's family, if you didn't perform success, they assumed you didn't have any. If you didn't brag, they thought you had nothing to brag about. If you stayed calm when someone took a jab at you, they took it as proof it didn't hurt. Diane, Claire's mother, was the worst about it, but she dressed it up as concern. Once, at brunch, she looked at a cousin's boyfriend's watch and said, "A man with taste changes the whole energy of a room." Then she glanced at me as if she hadn't meant anything by it. Sienna, Claire's younger sister, was less subtle. She called me practical the way someone might call a couch beige. "Tristan is so steady," she would say. "Claire never has to worry about surprises." People would laugh. Not cruelly, at first. More like the usual family teasing. At least, that's what Claire always told me. "She doesn't mean anything," Claire said after one dinner where Sienna joked that I probably compared prices before buying toothpaste. "I do compare prices," I said. Claire rolled her eyes from the passenger seat. "Exactly. It's funny because it's true. It's also weird that I'm always the butt of the joke. She jokes with everyone." "No, she jokes at everyone. There's a difference." Claire sighed and looked out the window. "Can we not turn every family thing into an analysis?" That became the rhythm. Her family would make a comment. I would wait until we were alone to say it bothered me. Claire would tell me I was reading too much into it, that they had no filter, or that I knew better than to take Sienna seriously. Once, after Diane made a comment about how some men knew how to make a woman feel taken care of, I asked Claire why she never said anything in the moment. Claire was taking off her earrings in the bathroom mirror. She didn't even turn around. "Because you're the one who knows better," she said. That sentence stayed with me longer than I admitted. Because apparently, knowing better meant swallowing it. Knowing better meant absorbing disrespect, so the table stayed comfortable. Knowing better meant Claire's family could be careless, but I had to be graceful. For years, I told myself that was marriage. You pick your battles. You don't make your spouse choose sides over every stupid comment. You let small things slide because families are imperfect and people are annoying. The problem was that small things don't stay small when everyone learns there are no consequences. The first time I heard the name Caleb, it was in the family group chat. Sienna sent a photo of herself standing beside a man in a fitted jacket, one hand in his pocket, the other around her waist. Behind them was a shiny luxury car, angled like it was parked for the photo, not for transportation. Sienna wrote, "You guys are going to love him. He actually knows how to live." Diane responded first with 3 heart emojis. Then, "Is that his car?" Sienna wrote, "One of them." A cousin commented, "Okay, Sienna." Claire reacted with a heart. I looked over at her on the couch. "New boyfriend." She smiled without looking up from her phone. "Apparently. He seems subtle." Claire gave me a look. "Can you not start?" I said 3 words. "You had a tone." I laughed once, but it wasn't really funny. I had punctuation. Claire locked her phone and set it face down. "Sienna is excited. Can we let her have that? I'm not taking anything from her. You do get weird around guys like that." "Guys like what?" She shrugged. "Confident. Successful. Flashy maybe." I stared at her for a second because it was such a strange thing to say so casually. "Claire, I don't get weird around successful men. I get annoyed around loud ones." "That's what I mean." "No, it isn't." She changed the subject, and I let her. That was still my habit then. A week later, Diane announced that she had made a reservation for a family dinner so everyone could meet Caleb. Not a holiday, not a birthday, just dinner, but one of those dinners where Diane acted like the reservation itself was an achievement. Claire started acting tense 3 days before it happened. She asked me what I was wearing. She reminded me twice that Sienna was nervous. She told me Diane had been looking forward to this all week, as if Diane had been preparing to host foreign royalty instead of meeting her daughter's boyfriend of 2 months. The day of the dinner, Claire stood in front of the mirror fixing one earring while I grabbed the reservation confirmation from the counter. "Just try to be easygoing tonight," she said. I paused with my keys in my hand. "Easygoing? You know what I mean." "I actually don't." She turned around, lips pressed together. "Warm. Open. Don't be dry." "Dry? Tristan, why are you warning me like I'm the problem?" She looked tired before we had even left the house. "Because you get that look when people impress my family." "What look?" "The one you're making now." I took a breath. I remember that clearly because I almost said exactly what I was thinking. I almost said, "Maybe I'm tired of your family only being impressed by packaging." But I didn't. Instead, I said, "I'm going to dinner. I'm going to be polite. That should be enough." Claire grabbed her purse. "I hope so." The drive was quiet, and not the comfortable kind. She checked her phone at every red light. Once, I saw Sienna's name flash across the screen, but Claire tilted it away before I could read anything. I didn't ask. At that point, I was still trying not to be the suspicious husband in a story nobody had written yet. What Claire didn't know was that I had already heard about Caleb from Owen. Owen is my best friend, and he has a gift for remembering names attached to bad stories. A few days before the dinner, I mentioned Sienna's new boyfriend while we were eating takeout in my kitchen. I said the name casually, and Owen stopped chewing. "Caleb what?" he asked. I told him. He wiped his hands on a napkin and pulled out his phone. "That sounds familiar." "From where?" "Complaint thread. Maybe business reviews. Some project name tied to him." "Hold on." He searched for a minute, then turned his phone toward me. It was a public complaint page. Not a lawsuit, not some dramatic expose. Just a messy trail of people saying Caleb had promoted an investment opportunity, collected deposits, then became impossible to reach when timelines slipped. There was also a professional profile where he called himself a founding partner of something that had no real details beyond buzzwords. Another screenshot showed him posing with a car under a caption about owning your standards, while someone in the comments claimed the vehicle was a short-term lease used for promotional photos. I said, "That could be a different guy." "Could be," Owen said. "That's why you don't use it unless he gives you a reason." "I'm not planning to confront my sister-in-law's boyfriend at dinner." "Good. Don't win the argument. Build the record." "That's your advice?" "Some people only respect receipts. Save everything and don't swing until you know what you're hitting." I saved the screenshots to a folder on my phone and forgot about them as much as a person can forget something like that. The restaurant was crowded when we arrived. Diane had reserved a long table near the back, the kind that required people to slide past each other awkwardly and apologize every time they needed the bathroom. There were shared appetizers already on the table, with half the family hovering around their seats and half standing like they were waiting for a show to begin. Diane hugged Claire first. Then she hugged me with one arm. "Tristan," she said, looking over my shoulder toward the entrance. "Caleb should be here any minute." "Good to see you too," I said. She smiled like she hadn't heard me. Robert was already seated at the far end, quietly studying the menu. He gave me a nod. Robert wasn't cruel. That almost made his silence more frustrating. He had spent years watching Diane and Sienna run the room and deciding that not participating was the same as not enabling. It wasn't. Sienna arrived about 10 minutes later with Caleb. He came in late, but somehow managed to make lateness look rehearsed. He wore a shiny watch that kept catching the overhead light and a fitted jacket that looked uncomfortable in a restaurant booth. He smelled like expensive cologne and placed his keys on the table before he sat down, even though no one had asked him to empty his pockets. "Sorry, everyone," Caleb said loudly enough for the tables near us to glance over. "When money calls, you answer." Sienna beamed as if that sentence had diamonds sewn into it. Diane laughed. "Well, we understand. Busy man." Caleb shook Robert's hand, then mine. His grip was firm in that performative way some men use when they think every interaction is a test. "Tristan, right?" he said. "That's right. Sienna told me about you." I waited. He smiled. Steady guy. The word landed with the exact same weight Sienna always gave it. Claire squeezed my knee under the table, hard enough that it wasn't affection. It was a warning. I looked at her hand, then at her face. She was smiling at Caleb. Dinner started with Caleb ordering for the table before anyone had agreed that was happening. We'll do the seafood tower, the sliders, the burrata, and let's get 2 bottles of the reserve cab, he told the server. The server paused and looked around, probably trying to figure out who was actually hosting. Diane's eyes lit up. Oh, that's generous. Caleb leaned back. I don't do small nights. Sienna laughed like he had said something profound. Robert glanced at the menu, then at Diane, but said nothing. Claire sat very still beside me. I could feel tension coming off her, but none of it was directed at the man turning dinner into a stage. It was directed at me, waiting for me to ruin the performance by noticing it. For the first 20 minutes, Caleb gave us the full act. The car in the photo? One of the toys. The watch? A gift to myself after closing a nasty deal. His work? I build things people pretend to understand once they're already too late. His schedule? Brutal, but freedom isn't cheap. Every sentence sounded like it was designed to be quoted by someone who didn't know what it meant. Diane asked what kind of car it was before she asked where he was from, what he cared about, or anything that would have made him a person instead of a display case. Caleb loved it. He watched reactions after every line. When someone laughed, he looked satisfied. When someone asked a follow-up question, he gave them just enough fog to sound important. Then he turned toward me. So, Tristan, he said, what's your thing? My thing? Yeah, everybody's got a thing. Big goals, big moves, something that gets you up in the morning. Claire's knee pressed against mine again. I took a sip of water. I get up just fine. A few cousins laughed softly. Caleb smiled wider. See, that's what I mean. Some guys are comfortable. Nothing wrong with comfort. Sienna jumped in. Tristan is very practical. Practical is useful, Caleb said. Every family needs one guy who knows when the coupon expires. The table laughed. Diane laughed too, then covered it by reaching for her wine. I looked at Claire. She stared at her plate. Caleb wasn't done. No offense, he said, which always means offense is absolutely intended. But I could never let a woman settle for basic. Women notice when a man can upgrade their life. I set my fork down. You don't know anything about my marriage. Claire whispered, please don't start. I turned to her. I didn't. Caleb lifted both hands. Hey, I'm just talking mindset. No, I said. You're talking at me. Claire's smile tightened so hard it looked painful. Can you just let people enjoy dinner? That was the moment the room shifted for me. Not when Caleb insulted me. Not when Sienna laughed. Not when Diane looked delighted by a man she had known for less than an hour simply because he ordered loudly. It was Claire. She hadn't asked Caleb to stop. She hadn't said, don't talk about my husband like that. She hadn't even changed the subject. She had corrected me in front of them before I had raised my voice, before I had said anything remotely out of line. Caleb noticed. Men like him always notice where the weak seam is. He leaned toward Claire with a sympathetic expression that made my skin crawl. Claire, be honest, he said. Do you ever get tired of safe and small? The table went quiet for half a second. Then Sienna gave a little laugh like she was trying to soften it, but she didn't tell him he had gone too far. Diane's eyebrows lifted, not with disgust, but with interest. A cousin looked down at his plate. Robert stopped cutting his steak. Claire's hand found my knee again. Tristan, she said under her breath, don't make this tense. I hadn't even said a word yet. Something in me went very cold. I could have exploded. There were a dozen things I wanted to say. I wanted to ask Claire why my dignity was always negotiable when her family wanted entertainment. I wanted to ask Diane if ambition only counted when it came with props on a steakhouse table. I wanted to ask Sienna if she needed Caleb to be impressive so badly that she didn't care what kind of man he was. Instead, I looked at Caleb. What was the project called again? I asked. He blinked, pleased to have the floor back. Which one? The deal you mentioned. The big one. He smiled like I had finally stepped into the trap he thought he was setting for me. Stonebridge access. It's not for everybody. Private placements, early-stage real estate, structured entry. People hear that, and their eyes glaze over unless they're used to moving capital. The name landed in my head like a key turning. Stonebridge access. That was the phrase in Owen's screenshots. I slid my phone out under the table, opened my saved folder, and found the complaint thread. Same name, same Caleb, same profile photo, just cropped differently. I didn't say anything yet. I let him keep talking. Caleb took my silence as submission. The difference between me and some guys, he said, glancing around the table, is that I build things people respect. Diane lifted her glass. A man with ambition changes the whole energy of a room. A few people nodded. Claire gave me another warning look. That was when I set my glass down. Is that the same Stonebridge access with the public complaints from people saying you took their money and disappeared? I asked. The room went still so fast I could hear the server at the next table describing side dishes. Caleb laughed once. It was sharp and fake. You seriously Googled me at dinner? No, I said. I remembered your name because people like you assume no one checks. Sienna's smile fell. What complaints? Caleb waved a hand. Old noise. Anybody doing real business gets haters. Robert leaned forward for the first time all night. Let me see. I handed my phone to him. Not Diane, not Sienna, not Claire. Robert had avoided enough conflict over the years that I wanted him to hold the one thing he couldn't avoid. He adjusted his glasses and read silently. Diane said, Robert? He didn't answer right away. Caleb reached for his wine. His fingers were not as relaxed as they had been 5 minutes earlier. Robert looked up. Is this fake? Caleb gave a charming shrug that no longer reached his eyes. It's complicated. People don't understand how real deals work. Robert tapped the phone. That wasn't my question. Sienna turned toward Caleb. You told me Stonebridge was closing this month. It is. Then why are people saying they haven't gotten money back from last year? They're impatient investors. I said, so the complaints are real. Caleb pointed at me. This is exactly what I mean. Jealous guys do this. They try to tear down what they can't compete with. Claire snapped. Tristan, why are you doing this? I looked at her for a long second. Because everyone was invited to laugh. Then I opened the family group chat. My thumb hovered for a moment, not because I was unsure whether Caleb deserved it, but because I knew once I sent those screenshots, Claire would make the rest of the night about my delivery instead of what had been delivered to me. Then I sent 3 screenshots. The first was the public complaint page tied to Stonebridge access, with names and personal contact details cropped out. The second was a screenshot Owen had found from a comment thread showing Caleb asking someone for an urgent short transfer because an account was temporarily frozen, with nearly identical wording used in 2 different messages. The third was the one that made Diane's face change. A message Caleb had sent in a public-facing thread mocking families who think a leased car and a dinner reservation mean you're made. I didn't send a rant. I didn't call him a fraud. I didn't add dramatic commentary. I wrote, since jealousy is the story now, here are the receipts. Phones started buzzing around the table. One by one, people looked down. Diane's mouth opened slightly. She read the third screenshot twice. The woman who had spent the night praising Caleb's ambition suddenly looked like she had bitten into foil. Kayla, Claire's cousin, whispered, Oh my God. Sienna was pale. Caleb, why would you ask people for money if you had all these deals closing? Caleb's face tightened. You don't understand liquidity. Did you ask me for money for the same reason? She asked. That got Diane's attention. What money? Sienna looked embarrassed before she looked angry. He said there was a hold on one of his accounts. He asked me to send a deposit for something and said he'd pay me back the next day. How much? Robert asked. Sienna didn't answer. Caleb leaned toward her. Don't do this in front of everyone. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. Diane found her voice. This should have been handled privately. I looked at her. It was private when he was insulting me. She flushed. Family dignity matters. Then someone should have protected it before dessert. Claire's chair scraped. Stop. There it was. Not Caleb, apologize. Not, Sienna, are you okay? Not, Mom, this is what happens when we reward cruelty. Just stop. Caleb tried to regain control by waving the server over. I'll take care of the check, he announced, too loudly. At least someone at this table knows how to be generous. The server looked relieved to move the night toward its ending. Caleb handed over a black card with the kind of casual flick that had probably worked for him many times before. For 5 minutes, nobody said much. Sienna stared at her phone. Diane whispered something to Robert, who didn't respond. Claire's jaw was set like she was holding back an entire speech she had already decided would be my fault. Then the server came back. Quietly. Painfully quietly. Sir, she said, leaning toward Caleb. There seems to be an issue with the card. Caleb forced a laugh. Run it again. We did. It's a fraud hold, Caleb said, loud enough for the table to hear. Happens when you move real money. Nobody laughed that time. The server looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her. I felt bad for her, not for him. Robert reached for his wallet, but I stopped him. I'm paying for mine and Claire's, I said. Claire turned to me. Seriously? Yes. I asked the server to split our portions separately. I paid, tipped well, and took the receipt. Not because I thought I would need legal proof of a steak dinner, but because Owen's voice was in my head. Build the record. Caleb eventually cobbled together payment with a different card and what looked like Sienna covering part of it through her phone. The expensive appetizers he had ordered sat half-finished in the middle of the table, looking as fake as everything else. I left before coffee. Claire followed me into the parking lot. The air outside felt colder than it was, maybe because I had spent 2 hours in a room where everyone seemed to think I existed as a comparison point. She caught up near the car. You made us look ridiculous, she said. I turned around slowly. That's your takeaway? You sent screenshots to the whole family. The whole family was sitting there. You could have pulled me aside. You were sitting right next to me when he called me safe and small. I was trying to stop a scene. No, I said. You were trying to stop my reaction. There's a difference. Claire crossed her arms. You don't understand my family. I understand them better than you think. They joke. They push. That's how they are. And your job as my wife is what? To coach me into taking it. Her face flickered. That's not fair. What part? You embarrassed Sienna. Caleb embarrassed Sienna. You embarrassed my mother. Your mother embarrassed herself. You embarrassed me. That one sat between us. I nodded once. There it is. Claire looked away. I unlocked the car. She didn't get in. My mom is upset, she said. I'm sure. You're not even sorry. For what? For making it public. I looked back toward the restaurant windows. Inside, I could see shadows moving around the table we had just left. I didn't embarrass your family, I said. I stopped letting your family embarrass me. Then I got in the car. Claire didn't come home with me that night. She went to Diane's. She sent one text around midnight. You took it too far. I stared at it for a while, then created a folder on my phone named Dinner. I saved the screenshots I had sent, the dinner receipt, the group chat exchange, and a note with the exact quotes I remembered. I wrote down the order of events while it was fresh. Caleb calling me safe and small. Claire telling me not to make this tense. Caleb talking about upgrading a woman's life. Claire asking me to just let people enjoy dinner. And both Caleb and Diane praising fake ambition. It felt ridiculous, documenting my own humiliation like minutes from a meeting. But I had spent too many years letting people argue from vibes. I wanted dates, words, proof. Owen called the next morning. I heard something happened, he said. Define something. Kayla texted me asking if I was the one who found the complaint thread. Why is Kayla texting you? She had my number from Claire's birthday thing. Focus. Are you okay? I was standing in the kitchen making coffee. Out of habit, I had pulled down 2 mugs. Claire's favorite was already on the counter. I stared at it for a second, then put it back in the cabinet. I'm angry, I said, but not in the way I expected. Good. That means you're thinking. Claire is mad at me. Of course she is. You broke the family rule. What rule? That you absorb the hit and call it maturity. I leaned against the counter. Owen said, don't let them make this about tone. Keep the receipts. Don't overtalk. Don't send paragraphs. I already made a folder. That's the most Tristan thing you've ever said. Thanks. I mean it as a compliment. Later that day, the family group chat became active again. Diane wrote, last night was humiliating and unnecessary. Private concerns should be handled privately. Sienna wrote nothing. A cousin responded with a thumbs up, then deleted it. Claire wrote, everyone needs time to cool down. I waited. Then Diane added, a man who was secure in himself wouldn't have needed to make a show. My hands tightened around my phone, but I didn't answer right away. Robert did. We laughed before we knew. That doesn't make us innocent. No one responded for almost 10 minutes. Then Diane wrote, Robert, please. Robert replied, no. Caleb needs to answer the question. I could almost feel the family structure cracking through the screen. Robert rarely pushed back publicly. Diane didn't know what to do with it. That afternoon, Sienna finally called Claire, then called me. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave one. An hour later, she texted, "Did you know about him before dinner?" I wrote back. Owen had sent me public complaints because the name sounded familiar. I didn't know if it was the same person until Caleb named the project. She responded, "Why didn't you warn me?" I stared at that message for a while. Then I typed, "Would you have listened before he embarrassed you too?" She didn't answer. I found out later that Sienna spent the next 2 days digging. Once she started looking past Caleb's watch and car photos, the image fell apart quickly. The car he had presented as one of his toys was tied to a short-term luxury rental service. His founding partner title led to a website full of stock photos and vague language. The deposit he had asked Sienna to cover hadn't been some temporary hold connected to a deal. It was one of several small, urgent transfers he had requested from different people while claiming money was tied up. Sienna deleted their couple photos by the end of the week. I wish I could say I felt bad for her. Part of me did. Being fooled is humiliating. But she hadn't brought Caleb to dinner simply because she loved him and wanted him welcomed. She had brought him like a trophy, and she had let him use that trophy to hit me over the head. The proof of that came at 11:37 p.m. 2 nights after the dinner. My phone buzzed while I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open and no real work being done. It was Kayla. "Hey, I know this is awkward. I should have sent this before dinner. I'm sorry I didn't." Then came screenshots. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was a private chat thread that didn't include me. Diane, Sienna, Claire, Kayla, and a few other relatives were in it. Sienna had sent Caleb's car photo days before dinner and written, "He's going to show Tristan what real ambition looks like, LOL." Diane responded, "Be nice." Then she added a laughing emoji. A cousin wrote, "Claire better keep Tristan from getting dry." Sienna wrote, "He always gets weird around men who aren't basic." Then Claire, "My wife. Just don't let Tristan get defensive. I don't want him ruining dinner." I read that sentence 3 times. There was another from Claire the next day. "He doesn't like successful men. If he gets quiet, ignore it." Kayla's message below the screenshot said, "It wasn't just Caleb running his mouth. I thought you deserved to know. I'm sorry. The apartment felt too quiet around me." The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Somewhere upstairs, a neighbor dropped something heavy enough to shake the ceiling. I sat there and realized Caleb had not been the main betrayal. Caleb was a stranger with rented confidence and a loud mouth. I didn't marry Caleb. I didn't build 9 years with Caleb. I didn't share holidays, bills, routines, fears, inside jokes, bad mornings, and quiet Sundays with Caleb. Claire knew. She knew before we sat down that Sienna intended to use Caleb as a measuring stick. She knew the family was already talking about me as insecure. She knew they were preparing a story where any reaction from me would be proof that I couldn't handle a successful man. And she warned me. Not them. Me. When Claire came home the next morning to get clothes, I was waiting at the kitchen counter with my phone on the table. She looked tired. Her hair was tied back, and she wore the same sweater she had left in. For 1 second, I saw my wife instead of the person who had sat beside me at that dinner, and the grief hit harder than the anger. "We need to talk," I said. She put her bag down. I figured. I opened Kayla's screenshots and slid the phone toward her. Her face changed before she read more than the first few lines. "Where did you get these?" "That's your question?" "Tristan. You knew?" She looked away. I tapped the phone. "Sienna wrote that Caleb was going to show me what real ambition looked like. You replied that you didn't want me getting defensive and ruining dinner. I was trying to keep things from blowing up. You were worried I'd ruin dinner because I might react to being insulted. I didn't think it would go that far. You were fine with it going far enough." Her eyes flashed. "That's not true." "Then what was the acceptable amount?" She didn't answer. I leaned back against the counter because standing upright suddenly felt like work. "You told them I don't like successful men," I said. "You do get uncomfortable around guys like Caleb." "Guys like Caleb turned out to be borrowing money from your sister while insulting me over appetizers." "That's not what I knew then. What you knew then was that your family planned to compare me to him." Claire rubbed her forehead. "I didn't want to fight with Sienna." She was excited. "So you chose to manage me." "I chose to protect the night." "No," I said. "You chose the audience." That landed. I saw it land because she got angry. "You don't know what it's like," she said. "My family has opinions about everything. They compare everything. Sienna finally had something good happening, and my mom was happy, and I just wanted one dinner where you didn't sit there judging everyone." I laughed once quietly. I was the one being judged. You judge them too. I judge behavior. They judge presentation. You made me look like I couldn't handle my own family. I stared at her. Even after the screenshots, even after the dinner, even after the man she had protected turned out to be exactly the kind of person he looked like under the shine, she was still talking about how she looked. That's still about you, I said. Her mouth tightened. I apologized. No, you haven't. I said I was sorry you felt ganged up on. I shook my head. Try again when you're ready to say what you did. She grabbed her bag. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Like what? Cold. That word used to bother me. Claire had used it for years whenever my calm made her uncomfortable. Cold meant I wasn't giving her the emotional reaction she could argue against. Cold meant I was refusing to make her the victim of my tone. This time, it didn't work. I'm not cold, I said. I'm done performing warmth for people holding matches. She left again. That night, I wrote down what I needed. Not because I thought Claire would agree, but because I needed to stop living inside vague hurt. When she agreed to meet 2 days later, I kept it simple. We sat at the kitchen table. No TV on. No phones in hand. Just the two of us in the house, where I had spent years making room for her family's comfort. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your family, I said. I'm asking you to stop choosing their comfort over my dignity. Claire looked down. I need 3 things, I continued. A direct apology in the family chat, not a vague one. A correction of the story that I was jealous or insecure. And counseling, where we talk about why you prepared to blame me before dinner even started. She looked up sharply. You want me to apologize to everyone? I want you to tell the truth to the people you lied to. I didn't lie. You gave them a frame. You told them I don't like successful men. You told them to ignore me if I got quiet. You made my reaction the problem before I had one. She swallowed. I was trying to keep peace. Peace for who? She had no answer. I also won't attend family events where I'm the entertainment, I said. No more sitting there while Sienna or Diane test how much I'll take. No more car rides home where you explain why disrespect doesn't count if it was said with a smile. Claire's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. This feels like punishment. It's a boundary. It feels like you're making me pay for one dinner. It wasn't one dinner. It was the clearest dinner. She stared at the table for a long time. The next day, she posted in the group chat. I'm sorry for how dinner went. Tristan did not deserve to feel attacked, and I should have handled things better. It looked decent if you hadn't been there. It sounded polite, mature even, the kind of apology people can praise because it doesn't require anyone to be specific. Diane replied with a heart. Kayla wrote, handled what better? No one answered. I read the message twice and felt nothing move inside me. That evening, Claire came home and said, I did what you asked. No, I said. You did the version that cost you the least. Her face hardened. Nothing is good enough for you right now. Specific would have been good enough. I apologized publicly. You apologized for the weather. You didn't say you knew about the setup. You didn't say I wasn't jealous. You didn't say Caleb insulted me, and you corrected me instead of him. She threw her purse onto the chair. Because now they already think I can't handle my own marriage. There it was again. I stood in the kitchen, listening to the same pattern with new evidence attached. That's still about how you look, I said. Not what you did. Claire's eyes were wet now. So what, that's it. 9 years and you're done because my family was rude. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say of course not. I wanted to reach for the version of us that still existed in old photos, in the coffee mugs, in the way I could still guess what she would order from any menu. But the truth was sitting between us. I'm not done because Caleb was rude, I said. I'm not even done because Sienna tried to make me look small. I'm done because you knew the room was being set up against me and you handed me instructions on how to take it quietly. She covered her face. I moved into the guest room that night. A week later, I opened a separate account and moved only what was mine to move. I didn't drain anything. I didn't hide money. I didn't punish Claire financially. I just stopped pretending that sharing everything was safe when respect had become conditional. I kept copies of the dinner receipt, the screenshots, the group chat, and Kayla's messages in the folder Owen had told me to maintain. Not because I planned to use them as weapons, but because Claire's family had already shown me how quickly they could turn a story around if nobody kept records. Invitations kept coming. Diane hosted a Sunday lunch and told Claire I was welcome if he can be civil. I declined without explanation. Sienna sent a short text 3 weeks after the dinner. "I'm sorry Caleb said what he said." I replied, "I'm sorry you brought him there to say it." She didn't respond. Kayla checked in once and apologized again. I told her I appreciated her telling me the truth, but I wish someone had valued it before I had to defend myself in front of a table full of people. Robert texted me a month later. "I should have stopped it before you had to. That one mattered more than I expected. Not because it fixed anything, but because it was the first apology from that family that didn't try to blur the edges." I wrote back, "I appreciate that, but I'm done being the table's lesson." Caleb disappeared from Sienna's life as quickly as he had entered it. From what I heard, he first tried to convince her that I had manipulated public information because I was threatened by him. Then she found another woman online who had received the same urgent money request. Then she discovered he had used her name in a deposit inquiry that made her look financially tied to something she didn't understand. By the time Sienna admitted he had lied about the car, the deals, and most of his title, nobody in the family chat was calling him ambitious anymore. Diane didn't apologize. She reframed. She told Claire that everyone had been misled by Caleb's confidence. She said the dinner had been unfortunate. She said I had valid concerns, but poor timing. Poor timing. As if there is a polite moment to tell a man to stop insulting you in front of your wife. Claire and I tried 2 counseling sessions. I went because I wanted to know I hadn't walked away without giving the marriage a final, honest room. The counselor asked Claire what she believed loyalty looked like in a marriage. Claire said, "Not humiliating each other in public." I said I agree. She looked surprised. I continued, "That's why it mattered when Caleb did it, and you helped him." Claire cried then. Real tears. Not performance. Not manipulation. Grief. For a moment, I thought maybe she finally understood. Then, in the car afterward, she said, "I just hate that now everyone thinks I'm a bad wife." I looked out the windshield and knew. It wasn't that Claire felt no remorse. I think she did. But her remorse had to pass through the mirror first. She could see my hurt only after she checked how it reflected on her. Formal separation sounds dramatic until you are the one filling out paperwork under fluorescent lighting, realizing your life has become file folders and forwarded emails. It wasn't cinematic. There was no grand final fight. No slammed doors. No speech in the rain. There were boxes. There was the sound of packing tape. There was Claire standing in the hallway holding a framed photo from a vacation years earlier, asking, "Are you really not taking this?" There was me saying, "You keep it." There was the strange quiet of sleeping in a place where no one expected me to attend brunch and be politely insulted. Months passed. I stopped checking the family group chat because I left it. Claire noticed within an hour. "You left the chat?" she texted. "Yes." "That seems extreme." "It seems accurate." Diane sent invitations through Claire twice. I didn't respond. Sienna never apologized for the setup, only for believing Caleb. Those are different apologies. Robert and I exchanged a few messages. Nothing heavy. He asked once if I would meet him for coffee. I did. He looked older than he had at that dinner. "I let too much go," he said. "I stirred my coffee even though I hadn't added sugar. A lot of people did." He nodded. "Diane is embarrassed." "I know. She doesn't handle that well." "I know that too." He sighed. "Claire misses you." That hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. "I miss who I thought we were," I said. Robert looked down at his cup. "That's a hard thing to lose." "It is." He didn't ask me to come back. I respected him for that. Claire called me late one evening after another counseling appointment I had declined to attend. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message anyway. "I know I should have defended you," she said. Her voice sounded small. "I know that now. I don't know why I cared so much about what they thought. I'm sorry." I listened to it twice. There was a time when those words would have been everything I wanted. But by then, I had learned something about delayed accountability. Sometimes people are sorry because they finally understand the harm. Sometimes they are sorry because consequences have made denial uncomfortable. And sometimes it is both, which makes it harder, not easier. I didn't call back that night. The next morning, I made coffee in a quiet kitchen. 1 mug. No second cup by habit. No phone buzzing with Diane's plans. No mental rehearsal for how to survive the next family dinner without being accused of ruining it by having a spine. I thought about that steakhouse table more than I wanted to. Not because Caleb mattered. In the end, he was just a man with a leased image, a declined card, and a talent for finding people who wanted to believe shine was substance. What stayed with me was Claire's hand on my knee. That squeeze under the table. not comfort. Warning. Her first instinct had not been to protect me from disrespect. It had been to protect everyone else from my reaction to it. That was the marriage problem. Caleb only gave it a microphone. The separation became permanent. Not because I hated Claire. I didn't. Hate would have been simpler. I still remembered good years. I still remembered her laughing in grocery store aisles, falling asleep during movies she insisted she wanted to watch, stealing fries off my plate after saying she didn't want any. But love without respect turns ordinary life into a series of negotiations over what you are allowed to feel. I was done negotiating after every humiliation. The last time Claire and I spoke directly, she asked, "Is there any way back?" I wanted to give her a gentle answer. I gave her an honest one. Not to what we had. She nodded like she had expected it and feared it at the same time. "I made a mistake," she said. "You made a choice," I said. "Then you made smaller choices around it until it became a pattern." She cried quietly. I didn't comfort her. That may sound cruel, but I had spent years comforting her through the consequences of not defending me. I was tired. When people ask what happened, I don't lead with Caleb. He is the funny version. The fake rich boyfriend, the screenshots, the card decline, the expensive appetizers nobody wanted after the room went silent. It makes for a clean story because everyone knows where to point. But the truth is less entertaining. I left because my wife's family had trained me to accept disrespect as the price of belonging, and my wife helped them collect it. I didn't ruin that dinner. I just stopped being the quiet man at the table everyone thought they could safely laugh at. The part that hurt wasn't Caleb insulting me. It was realizing my wife had been waiting to see if I'd take it. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.